And hello again, everyone. Live from isolation, it's your favorite medical student, Henson, back at it again. Today, we're going to be talking about the MCAT and 3 things that I did really well studying for the MCAT, along with 5 things that I wish I knew before taking it. So, if you're new to the channel, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment, and let's make this journey about more than just me. The MCAT, which stands for the Medical College Admissions Test, is a test administered and developed by the AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges, and it's a standardized multiple choice test that helps test your problem skills, your critical thinking, and your knowledge of natural and behavioral sciences that are all necessary to get into med school. Now, what exactly does that all mean? It's a test to help you get into med school. As simple as that. But even simpler than that, we could call it stage 1 of the 7 layers of hell. Now, the MCAT itself is 7.5 hours long, but that's including all of the breaks. So you're really testing for about 6 hours and 15 minutes total. There are about 230 questions that span 4 different sections of the MCAT. The chemical and physical foundations of biological systems, the critical analysis and reasoning skills, CARS for short, the biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, and the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior. And these topics all cover organic and inorganic chemistry, physics, biology, biochemistry, basic research and statistics, psychology, sociology, ethics, philosophy, cultural studies, as well as population health and humanities. Alright, so 3 things I did really well going into this exam. Number 1, I studied. And I'm not talking about pick up a book and spend hours trying to figure out what's going on type of studying. I'm talking planned and actual prepared studying with goals and objective in place. Now, my study schedule for the MCAT was actually pretty easy and very straightforward to follow, which really helped me a lot as everything started to get a little rougher and I started to get sick and tired of anything science related. I broke my study schedule down into 3 different parts. The first was review, the second was the actual learning, and then the third was reinforcement of everything I learned. I'm not someone who's going to pretend as if they knew how to study and was a perfect studier going into this. One, I knew I didn't know how to study, and it became extremely evident by the second day of trying to study for the MCAT. I was really just wasting time. I was going about things, nothing was sticking, nothing was actually really working for me. I would read something and then I would spend hours reading over the same exact paragraph with nothing really quickly. Now, at my university, we had a learning specialist, and within those first 3 days after realizing I didn't really know what was going on and also realizing that I did not have much time before taking my exam, I emailed him and he answered me back, and within 3 days I was in his office talking about it. Now, within the first 10 minutes of the meeting, he told me that I was basically wasting my time going about this because the way I was studying wasn't going to bring me any benefits for the future. So then the rest of the meeting, after going over the results of my learning test, we were able to develop a study schedule that actually worked really well for me. Like I said, the study schedule is broken down into 3 parts, so there are also 3 segments to your day. Now, the first segment, the review segment, I did between 9 and 10 a.m. or about 10 and 11 a.m. based on when I woke up. And that part focused on reviewing all the material from the day before. So everything I did during the actual learning phase of the day before, I reviewed that morning, which meant I went over my notes, I answered the chapter objectives from the day before, and any other kind of nuances that I needed to work out. The second part of my day focused on the actual learning. That I started between 2 p.m., 3 p.m. based on what I was doing that day. And with that one, it lasted about 4 to 5 hours. And it was just actually accomplishing the objectives I had set for that day, going over the material that I had planned on going over, and trying my best to actually learn it. Following that, around 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., depending on how I was feeling, I started the third segment of my day, which was the reinforcement part. And with that segment, I basically did questions, all the review questions for the day. I answered the chapter objectives, and I found any other type of online resource that was available that could also help me to reinforce the material. In between all of those different segments, kind of just live your life, go about your business, do everything you need to do. But by breaking down my day, I also made sure that I didn't burn out. I didn't spend 6 to 8 hours sitting down trying to study and figure out what's going on. I was able to break it down into parts that also allowed me to develop a routine and a habit, and that all kind of filtered into my ability to keep going. So, number one, study. Second thing I did well, also focused on studying, but it was varied studying. Now, most people I knew, they kind of just go through each and every one of the books. They finish a book, go to the next one, finish a book, go to the next one. But with my studying, what I did was I would tackle like a few chapters of one book at a time, and then switch over to a whole different book. And then I would continue that, going through every single book that the MCAT had until I got to the end of it. By doing that, when I did see a problem, when I approached the problem, I was able to see the different multifaceted ways that the problem can be answered and the different components of it that went into it. And also by doing that, I didn't forget as much as the earlier stuff, because once you start studying and you start looking through the different books, you'll notice that a lot of things are tied, or a lot of things are repeated in several of the books. But if you go through one book, by the time you reach it in another book, you'll most likely have forgotten it, and it will be like relearning. However, by varying your studying and by also combining the books, not only are you reinforcing it by seeing it multiple times in different books, but you are less likely to forget it. And now the third thing that I did that worked really well for me, centered around the mental capacity of it all. So with my study schedule, I did have days off. I had review days. I had days where I just slept, because at the same time, while studying is important, making sure that you don't burn out before the exam is also just as equally important. And trying to study for hours upon hours every single day in and day out was not going to be something that really contributed to my overall success. So I did make sure that while studying, I did allot time to not study and to actually remember that I am a human and I do have a life outside of school. Okay, 5 things I wish I knew before taking the MCAT. Number 1, do more practice tests. Now, this can seem pretty much like common sense or pretty logical to most people. However, for me, it wasn't something that I thought was that important. So going into the MCAT, I didn't do as many practice tests as I should have. However, the best way to get used to the exam, the best way to build up the stamina to actually sit there and take a 7-hour exam, and the best way to learn is honestly by doing practice tests, doing things that actually apply everything that you're learning together. Something I really neglected, but I'm telling you now, you should not. Do as many tests as possible. There are free tests online. I know different programs such as Kaplan or Exam Crackers, they also offer practice tests along with their study materials. I did Kaplan, and Kaplan offered a plethora of exams to take. I did not do them. Do not be like me. Take as many practice tests as you can. It will help you learn, and on top of that, it will help you like get ready for the exam. Once you do the practice test, also take the time to actually review the practice test. You should not be reviewing a practice test in a few hours. It took me 3 days, I think, to go over just one exam. If you're going question by question and going back to the material and actually figuring out why you got it wrong. So do more practice tests. Number 2, OnKey. For those of you who don't know what OnKey is, I will have a video on OnKey and the ins and outs of OnKey. However, OnKey is basically flashcards that work on the learning curve or the learning algorithm, to be more specific. So with OnKey, it would help you with the rote memorization aspect of it all. It will help you remember like the fine-tuned details. It will help you remember all those different formulas, all those different like amino acids, everything that you need to honestly just spend time harping on and just redoing over and over again. OnKey would be clutch for all of that. I didn't know OnKey existed when I was taking my MCAT. I learned about OnKey here in medical school, and I can say it is very useful. So I can imagine that if I knew about it when I was taking my MCAT, how beneficial it would have been to me. So get used to OnKey and try to incorporate it into your studying, especially during your review days or your review mornings, because it will help you a lot in remembering things. Number 3, do not get lost in the weeds. There are hundreds of materials and overarching concepts to go over before this MCAT starts. You are going to have so much information that you will feel as if it is quite impossible to know every single thing. You will feel overwhelmed. If you're going through something and there's something you don't quite understand and you've read about it, you've watched a video on it, and you've done questions and you're still not understanding it, my advice to you, keep it moving. do something else and just try to get the general concept of it all. Because again, you're not, yes, you can be that perfect person who is 100% okay in everything and is just the genius that everyone wants to be. However, a majority of the time you will not be, and that's perfectly fine. Do not spend so much time worrying about one concept that you're neglecting others or you're not leaving time for other things. Don't get lost in the weeds. If you allow yourself to get through as many of the overarching topics as possible, and then once you're at the end start trying to actually like nail down certain things, you'll do a lot better than wasting time in the beginning trying to master and memorize every single little detail. Number 4, take it as early as you can. If you can, take it the year before you apply for your actual medical school application cycle. If you can't do that, then take it early in the summer. My biggest mistake was taking the MCAT in September. Now, although it worked out perfectly well for me, I can tell you that one, it was very stressful, and two, you should not do it because you'll be studying for the MCAT while filling out your medical school application, which is honestly a very tedious thing. It does create like a lot of stress and anxiety waiting for the MCAT scores, knowing that like your application is still pending these MCAT scores. So take it early, get it out of the way, study for it, and in that way you'll know your scores before you apply, and that way you can also balance your schools out better and realistically look at the schools that you may have a better chance to get into. And the fifth and final tool is don't do it alone. The MCAT is hard. The MCAT is stressful, and the MCAT creates a lot of different anxiety. However, remember that you have a support system. Remember that you have friends. Remember that there are other people studying. Don't try to do this alone and take all the stress and anxiety alone. Now, I have my parents who were 100% as supportive as I could have ever asked for. They called me, they made sure I was okay. If I really needed food, they made sure that they would bring me food. I had friends who understood, friends who were willing to not only check on me, but like when I needed a day off, when I needed something to do, they were there. They supported me, and on top of that, they just made sure that I actually studied. They held me accountable, which was just as important as supporting me and giving me the mental breather. So don't do it alone. Find an out when you need an out, but at the same time, find people who can keep you grounded and people who can keep you accountable. Okay, so for everyone who did watch this video and want more information on my study schedule, more specifics on my study schedule, or better yet, you want the breakdown of how I tackled every chapter or the order of which I did the chapters, feel free to reach out to me. You can follow me on my Instagram or email me. I'll be happy to answer you. I'll be happy to help you out and give you specific details on how exactly I went through everything. Along with like different study techniques that I did use. And of course, my study schedule is very adaptable to people who are working or people who don't have the ability to just like dedicate this amount of time to just studying. So this is something that can be accommodated to all different scenarios. So these were my 3 things that I did really well and 5 things that I wish I knew before I went into the MCAT exam. So for everyone who's new, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment, and thank you for watching this video.